Welcome to Florida Education News. My name is Dr. Tony Arza, and today I have the pleasure of sitting down with Michelle Pozzie, who is a school board candidate in Sarasota County.
Hi, nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
So could you tell me a little bit about what motivated you to run for school board? One of the things that we're trying to do at Florida Education News is make sure that voters are educated. And one of the best ways that I believe is that a voter has the opportunity to hear from the candidates themselves. And so main thing I want to do is just give you the opportunity to introduce yourself and kind of share what motivated you to run for school board. Why did you get involved? Could you kind of share a little bit?
Yeah, I love this question because it really gets, it helps me to tell people that are watching this that they need to get involved, whether they're running for school board or wanting to go to school board meetings. I started going to school board meetings back in 2020, 2021, just a little concerned about some of the things I saw coming into our school system. We saw the entire country go through a COVID protocol that we didn't match here in the state of Florida. So we saw kind of how parents chose to come to the free state of Florida because of the way we handled it. So when I was looking at all of these, what was taking place from 2020 to 2022, I got involved, went to all of the school board meetings, spoke about budgeting concerns, and then I realized there's only so much complaining you can do before you try to look inward and say, do I hold something that could be a solution? Can I maybe jump on the other side of the podium and really do something effectively that would help? And that's why I got involved in this race. I happen to live in the district that's open, District 5. I have 2 children that are now young adults. I did oversee their educational career, if you would. I mean, they did public school, they dabbled in charter school, a little homeschool, early college. So I feel like this recipe of what we call school choice was something I've lived for the last 20 years. And it's not something that we should be holding parents as the enemy for. It actually is taking a lot of the restrictions on children being able to blossom in education, because not every child learns the same way. I've lived that firsthand. I've seen the educational trends over the last 20 years. I think this is the time to bring somebody who's innovative in what education might look like, so that we're not fearing this new, I guess, school choice opportunity that we live in. I think I hold a certain skill set that will help us to be able to fly here in this district.
Well, it sounds like you have a lot of experience. Could you share a little bit about how you think that experience will help you on the school board and the experience that you would bring if elected?
Absolutely. So there's a couple things that come to mind. First, I've got about 25 years of experience teaching in the performing arts industry. You want to talk about children who aren't one size fits all? Put them in theater, put them in dance. And so I realized that there are different, academics looks different to a lot of people. Yes, it's reading, writing, arithmetic, but what do you encompass that in? And we even see that in a lot of our performing arts schools here in Sarasota. Children are not one size fits all. Education can't be either. And I've got a lot of experience working with that. Also, I was formerly a recreational director here in Sarasota for the Sarasota County YMCA. My job was to create a syllabus and activities in whether it's in dance, gymnastics, swimming, you name it. And my success in enrollment and membership base was directly tied to my job. I think we need to look at education that way as well. If we're doing the job we should do, we wouldn't have a decline in enrollment. So I want people to know I've already been held accountable with that when it comes to families and children. If the families didn't like what I was promoting, if the children didn't like the curriculum they were getting, they would remove their children. Well, what have we seen in education? So I think it parallels. I've got a unique experience and skill set to help us in this district.
And you bring up school choice a lot and the reason why you're running. And one of the big issues in education in Florida is school choice. And there have been people that have been crying foul because of the fact that now you have universal school choice in Florida. Every parent has a right to send the child to the school of their choice. If you want to go to a private school in Florida, the state of Florida encourages you to do that. There have been board members that have been very outspoken and have said that that's the reason why there's declining enrollment in traditional public schools. There are those that have said there's been a monopoly in public education for a long time, and that all we've done is create a more fair playing field for fair competition. But regardless of where people stand, every voter wants to know where their candidates stand on the issues. Could you kind of share a little bit of where you stand on school choice in Florida?
Well, I'll tell you, as a mom, I am always going to stand on the side of parents, children, and educators. And in my opinion, education is one of those arenas where I don't know that a big bureaucracy is necessarily the answer to anything. When has government ever been the answer to anything? To sound more Reagan. But I think we're focused on the wrong thing. If I were a business and I looked at losing, like in our district, 1,500 students over the last 4 or 5 years, if I'm a business, I'm not looking at my consumers and holding them accountable. I'm looking at what did my product not present that they went to other avenues. Nobody's asking that question, especially in my race. They're quick to try, my opponent is quick to put the blame on the state, on Governor Ron DeSantis, on this school choice opportunity here in the state of Florida. If anybody had ever studied the education trends throughout the last 20 years, we had scholarship programs in 1999. We've been innovative in the way that we think about education. I don't think a bureaucrat should tell people what they should do with their children or their children's education. I think the parents are best suited for that. This is not a political talking point. This should be reality. And I think everybody, regardless of party platform, should be behind parents being that engine that drives their students' education.
You bring up your opponent, and school board races are meant to be nonpartisan in the state of Florida. It was on the ballot last time,
Yes.
whether they should be partisan, and the voters voted overwhelmingly to keep politics out of education. Your opponent has been endorsed by the Democratic Party, and you've been endorsed by the Republican Party. We invited your opponent to sit down and also ask her why she was endorsed by the Democratic Party and how she feels about politics and education, but she refused to come. But if I could just ask you, where do you think is the place of politics and education? You are endorsed by the Republican Party, and the voters would want to know, where do you stand on politics in the classroom?
Well, first of all, it does kind of break my heart that this is a nonpartisan race, for the simple fact that I think we have an obligation to let voters be informed. And that shouldn't be something we are shying behind. I'd actually be curious to see in 67 counties in the state of Florida how many parties have gotten involved in the school board races. As you just said, I'm endorsed by the Republican Party. My opponent is endorsed by the Democrat Party. That is proof that there is something behind either the parties we belong to or the vision that we see going forward for our district. It's not something that's bad to make that partisan. But when you talk about education specifically, my job is to debate and enforce policy at the district level that's passed in Tallahassee. That may get politically charged at times. There should be healthy debate in our school boardroom. The job is to make sure that politics doesn't trickle into the classrooms. If I do my job effectively, we debate it healthily in the school boardroom, it never makes it to the classroom. And I think that's the trick. What you're seeing happen, if you look at even my opponent, obviously endorsed by the Democrat Party. To me, that means I get to go look at what the Democrat Party platform has been throughout history in the last couple years when it comes to education, when it comes to open borders, when it comes to not wanting to pass the Save America Act, so not wanting transparency in elections. These are things that when you're endorsed by a party, you buy. They're a part of you. And that really that kind of upsets me because there's a dichotomy there that you can't argue between the Republican platform and the Democrat platform. I think we deserve to give Sarasota County and our schools the best foot forward, and I think that happens by staying education driven. That's why my platform is to, yes, not allow politics into the classroom, but let's have a healthy debate on policy. That's how we get good policy.
One of the things that we've also seen is that there have been, in this race in particular, and I've gone around the state, I've interviewed candidates on both sides of the aisle because school board is supposed to be nonpartisan, and I've met some great people on both sides.
Yeah.
And Sarasota feels a little different.
Yeah.
It seems, based on the donors that are donating to the opponents of those that are endorsed by the Republican Party in Sarasota County and those that are endorsed by the Democratic Party, Jimmy Glover, Beth Mayberry, Megan Teneman, it seems like there is a concerted effort to impact education in Sarasota. That seems a little bit unique, but what are you feeling? What are you seeing on the ground? And what would you want the voters to know about what you're seeing in Sarasota?
As a mom who's not a politician, who's running in this race, I was shocked that I'm not running just against an opponent. It feels like I'm running against a Democrat left-wing machine. It's what it feels like. If you look at some of the donors, my donors are mom and pop. I mean, I know I get flack sometimes for not raising a whole lot of money, but they're giving what they can give. Some small businesses. If you look at my opponent and the trilogy that they're presenting, a lot of them have the same donors. They've got ties to very extreme, you're talking Obama, Biden, you can look for yourself. Planned Parenthood, we all were in shock over what happened in New York City, right? The capitalist capital of our country now with Mandami. Well, check where some of these funds are coming from. Do we want that here in Sarasota County? Is that a representative of what we say we don't want politics in the schools? Is that a representative of who should be backing a school board candidate? You think you would want somebody who's more grassroots driven, who's more conservative? And I've been shocked at the feeling of looking at these numbers and seeing that this is actually a machine that's pushing against my race.
No, and when we look at the donors, and we've also seen some of the things that you're bringing up, we've seen that there are some donors that have some very unique ties, concerning ties.
Yes.
Or at least ties that voters would want to know about. They're ties that, we actually invited all of the candidates to come so that they could explain,
Sure.
what are these ties, what are these relationships, what is motivating this. But to see, what would you want the voters to know when they look at the donors that are contributing, and to see that donors from California, donors that have ties to organizations that have worked alongside Zohran Mamdani in New York, individuals who have given the maximum contribution that's allowable under the law in the state of Florida to a campaign.
Yes.
Do you think that voters should be concerned about that? Are you concerned about that?
Well, I think it's interesting because part of what we've been saying for the last 4 years is don't New York, my Florida. Don't California, my Florida. I think it's not just conservatives, it's independents. We're very much like-minded when it comes to we want to be left alone largely by government and to be able to live our lives and succeed and have a great economy. So when I see these special interest column from California and from New York that have a special vested interest in Sarasota County with 45,000 students, what is it here that's bringing them here and their money? I think this is bigger than just an election. I think it's an ideology that wants to creep back into our schools. I think it's an attempt to almost hijack what we call our precious school system. I would love for the voters to be able to be a little more aware of what's going on, because honestly, it's not just Democrat, Republican. There is extremism that's flowing through these dollars coming from these states. There's a reason why we live in Florida. I love California for their mountains, but I'm not living under their political spectrum.
And their wine.
Yeah, well, that's true.
No, but one of the things that, and I wish that they could be here, and look, I always want to give people a fair opportunity to explain, and I think the voters deserve to hear from people themselves. They deserve to know the facts, and all we can do is see what we see, and we owe it to the voters to at least inform them on who what kind of money is behind, and to see maximum contributions come from California. It is strange, and it does raise questions about what the agenda is and what are they trying to accomplish. And like you said, it seems like there's an agenda. Before earlier we sat down with Karen Rose, board member Karen Rose, and she brought up that they're focusing on education because there might be this vision of trying to create the new voter class. And one of the things that Florida Education News we want to make sure is that education is focused on making sure kids are introduced to reality, that parents are at the forefront of their child's education. We're on the issues. We want to make sure that kids are learning just about reality, to read, write, and do math. What do you think in Sarasota? Why is it that there seems to be so politically charged that it's almost becoming an outlier in the state of Florida? I mean, I've been around in all these other races, and it seems like there's a lot more intensity here, political intensity. Where do you think that's coming from?
Well, it's definitely coming from outside. Because I'll tell you, Republican numbers speak for themselves here, independent numbers speak for themselves, and again, we voted to keep this nonpartisan. So I think the fact that we've done that here in the state of Florida shows that we didn't ask for this stuff to infiltrate into our school district and into our school district races. The one thing I want to mention is that when you talk about my opponent being endorsed by the Democrat Party, it's important to understand what those who have been Democrat Party aligned in the past have done in our district, because we do have a history of behavior and of voting that we can hold them accountable for. My opponent's also endorsed by a current sitting school board member, Tom Edwards. Tom Edwards is the one who force masked children throughout our district against Governor DeSantis' wishes. We were the first in the state to do that. I don't think a lot of voters right now really understand that. He has also been the one that's brought a lot of politics into our school board room. We've got bad headline after bad headline because of what Democrat-aligned policies have done in our school board. And the one thing that it takes us away from is the conversation of learning achievement gaps, our reading scores. I love that we're an A-rated district, but when you've got some high schools that are graduating at a 37% proficiency in math, what is that diploma worth? I'm more concerned about our young people being able to go get a meaningful job, go to get a meaningful degree, and feel emboldened and empowered. I say that a lot in my campaign. I want these kids to graduate feeling empowered. As long as we're talking about these ideological offshoots, we're not talking about academics, and that's where I want to stay completely driven, academic focused.
Do you think that the Democratic Party is trying to take over Sarasota County Public Schools?
Absolutely. I think in 2022, when we showed overwhelmingly that we are a conservative majority, we want to stay driven on academics, and we swept and got a majority of conservatives on our school board, I think they're looking at this as a rematch, as 2.0. And I'm not the first one to say that there are people out there who would like to grab control of young people's minds, make sure that they're indoctrinated with one way of thought instead of teaching them how to think. And there's been one party in this ticket that's always been aligned with that. It's not Republicans. So voters need to be super hyper aware of what's going on here in Sarasota County. This isn't just another friendly election. This is voting for the future of our children. Do you want children who are forced what to think, or do you want them to be able to think? Do you want students that are ready to graduate being able to read on level, being able to do math on level, being able to go get a good trade education? You need to elect conservatives who will keep us academic driven.
So look, well, it's been a pleasure to sit down with you, and I want to thank you for taking the time to join us.
Awesome. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right.